Hey everybody, it's Lebo with Lebo's Pinball. Back on Getaway, making a little more progress on it. And today I'm going to cover a couple things. I've got one spot where a metal post goes through the playfield, and I noticed that it was bent, but it was worse than just being bent. It was a little bit wobbly, and no matter how much I tightened it, it was just really not going to solve the problem. So I'm going to show you about how I go about fixing that problem, some wood repair that's involved with it. The second thing we're doing is just a basic flipper rebuild job. So hang tight, and here we go. So quite often in a lot of pinball machines, you'll have metal posts like the ones that you have here, and they'll have a rubber sleeve over them, and they're basically protecting areas that you don't want to just have the ball smack, but they will take the hit instead. And given time and a lot of hits, these things can take quite a beating. Sometimes the metal post will bend itself a little bit, or even worse, like in my case of what I'm working on, the actual wooden hole going through the playfield has kind of just wallowed out a little bit. And so even though this was tight, it was still kind of shaking back and forth. This one I've actually already repaired, and you can't really tell because everything's put back together, but it's nice and solid now. But as I was moving over to this other area, I had noticed that, and here you can already see where I've already jumped ahead on it. I've noticed that the post that was going through that hole, which is, here's the post, I've removed it. It's looking a little rough. I've got some new ones. But this post really isn't bent. It might be slightly, but you can tell it's taken a beating from the balls hitting. You can see that little groove all the way around it. Guess the rubber wasn't doing its job. But again, that hole had just sort of wallowed out. So what I've done, what I did at least on the other one, and what I've done here so far on this one, I've gotten a wooden dowel, and instead of just getting just your regular wooden dowel you would get from Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever hardware store, I wanted to try to see if I could get some wood that was a hardwood. I didn't want to go with like pine or actually oak. I think is a little bit soft too. I think, but this I think this is maple, if I remember right. Let's see here. I cannot read. Where is it here? Yep, maple dowel, and you can see it's a 3/8 inch. I just got a 3-foot section, so I should have plenty for doing a lot of this. And as bold as it is to go get the drill out, I did. I got a 3/8 inch drill bit. Actually, I started out with a little smaller drill bit and just kind of worked myself up into just getting a 3/8 inch hole drilled. And here's the thing, right now, you don't really have to have that hole exactly flat and true. I mean, you want to, but if you don't right now, it's not the end of the world, because what you're trying to do at this point is basically fill this hole back in with something that's really solid. And then once, we've got wood glue that I've put around in through the hole, and then also smeared wood glue on the dowel itself on both surfaces. And I basically had to hammer that thing in. It's pretty much a pressed fit. So it should be really solid. The other one came out very solid. But once that's finished drying, I'm going to come back through with another drill bit. I've got to go check the size again. But basically, I'm taking a pair of calipers, and I'm just just measuring the diameter of the shaft part of the post right here, and I put a new one in. And then here's where it kind of gets important, where you want to get this as true and straight as possible, and that way you can have the post sitting in there nice and straight. So I'm going to come back to that once this gets done drying. All right, while the wood is drying, it's almost done. Let's go ahead and kind of measure some things here, because we're going to get the correct drill bit that we need out for this new post. So first thing I'm going to do, let's check to see what this post diameter is. It's coming out to be 175, 176. All right, so I've got several drill bits here. Harbor Freight Special, the best. These were free, matter of fact. Last time I went there to buy something, I got a deal here. So what is this measuring at? 171, a tiny, just looks like about 4 or 5 thousandths smaller than the hole, which is probably going to be what we want. This is super hard to read. Let's see here. I can hold it still. This one looks to be 11/64. That's probably what we're going to go with, because the next size up, oh yeah, that'd be a problem. 0.84, that's 10 thousandths over. That's just going to basically end up with it being wobble. This one is, by the way, a 3/16. So putting that one away, we're going to stick with the 11/64. And now let's go get this in the drill and get ready to go shoot it straight down. You can get careful and as straight as I can. That was slow and steady. Golly. Hey, quite a bit of dust. All right, let's clean this up. All right. Okay, let's check it out on the other side, see how we're looking. Let's loosen up the pin dock rotisserie. All right, let's see. I don't know if you can see that or not. See why that showed up in the camera. All right, here. Let's see where we got it. All right, oh, it's a little higher. There we go. All right, so here's where the hole came through. It's probably shifted just a little bit from where it was originally. Originally, it was probably just a little bit more forward, but I think we're fine. Oops, I think it ran the right way. That is still not the right way. Snagged on some wires. There we go. All right, so now it's time to drift the new post in. Oh yeah, one little minor detail before we do this. This actually, in this case, may not matter much, but I've got, this isn't actually a Sharpie marker. This is an acrylic paint. I've used this for some other playfield repairs because you don't want to use Sharpie. That stuff will not last. And really, if I really wanted to be super detailed back, I'd come back with a clear paint. I'm not going to fool with it on this, but on other, playfield, a little bit of artwork touch-up that I've done, where they're using an airbrush or a little tiny touch-up pen like this. Yeah, if you spray some clear coat after, then that helps protect it even more. But I'm just trying to basically take care of that edge. When I put the post in, it's probably going to cover it up or come real close to it anyways. All right, now let's take the new post. And yeah, I knew it was going to be a little bit of an interference fit, but not much. I pretty much press it with my thumb. That was definitely the right bit to use. All right, now we're going to flip it back over. Put a washer and a lock nut on it, and we will be done. Let's tighten this thing down. All right, let's take a look at it. All right, it's all right. Yep, if anything, it might be leaning forward. Yeah, maybe a tiny bit, but this one I think is also bent, which I'm hoping to get a new one. Marco sells them. This one's a little bit longer than the one that's over here. The threaded portion is longer, and I found out that the stock they had a problem. These were the same as those. They are correcting that as we speak, so I'll be getting new ones here really soon. So if I get new ones, I'll swap this out. But anyways, I'm going to probably go ahead and proceed along with some other stuff. But for now, we're going to be shifting over to the flippers. All right, so let's take a look at the condition of the current flippers. These are really not too terrible. First thing I like to look for is just to see how wobbly are the bushings that they're in. And these, and there's a little bit. Yeah, I don't like that one. That's not good. That's too much. You got one more up here. That one's a little wobbly too. And the one thing I was noticing, yeah, it's still, I can feel there's like a weird little drag. Now, of course, I'm pulling the flipper this way. The normal action is it's the coil, that's pulling the plunger and it flips it out. So, I mean, I'm putting a little different force than what it's used to seeing, but anyways, yeah, I mean, they're all needing a rebuild. This game's getting, you know, a full shop job, so that's sort of a requirement to just do that and reset the clock on the flippers. The other thing that I like to do is change out the whole bats, and these plastic bats don't look too terrible, except I don't know what's up with the markings and such that are on there. But what happens is that they can start getting little hairline cracks in them over time, and you may not really notice it right off, but when the ball will start hitting it, it just starts to take away the power, and you're wanting to have everything fresh and just hitting, you know, solid and clean. And the other thing is, whenever we get these all put back in place, to get them clocked appropriately. Now see, these are actually not too bad. There's a couple of alignment pins. See this right here? You can basically drop a little pin or a toothpick. Toothpick is a little thick though, but you can put something in there that basically kind of helps you guide that that's right where it should be. They look like they're done pretty much correctly. That one on that side might be a tad low. But anyways, let's get at it. All the parts that we have for the kit now. Marco and a lot of companies, they sell kits. You know, it's, you know, everything that you need to rebuild the flipper. Now, in the case of Getaway, or a lot of games, it's just for 2 flippers. And Getaway, I have 3 and have an extra right one. But I went ahead and I just ordered, partially because I was lazy, I just ordered 2 rebuild kits. So I'm going to have an extra left side that I won't be using directly on this game, but I'm going to hang on to it because there's extra parts that I often will find that I need. I don't know why they don't do it. It drives me nuts, but their kit does not include these bushings, and I've replaced them every single time. They're always a marginal problem, and I don't understand why they don't include it. I really wish they would do that, but they haven't, so that's no big deal. I've ordered some extra of those, and or I've ordered 3 plus some extras just to have on hand. And of course, here's the new bats that I talked about. You notice maybe so far that I've been putting the poly bands in on this game, and I've been using black everywhere. But for the flippers, I'm going to actually go with red, just to kind of give it a little bit different look. So let's get. Here we are looking at things underneath. I can tell these have been replaced at one point. I mean, the coils are new. This looks like, actually, I think coils that you would get from Marco. I think that's who they use as pin coil brand. Those have been both replaced at one point. The one that's on the upper right, I think that's original. But just to kind of point out a few things if you're not familiar with this, I really like this style flipper because the spring is over on the side. Some earlier games, you'll have the spring that wraps around this plunger. And what I don't like about it is when it comes down here, it kind of crushes and sometimes, you know, buckles the spring, and it really sort of interferes a little bit. And in fact, some of the games you can actually retrofit this concept in. You can put a little extension spring on the side instead of this spring that they'll put here, and do it like this. And this is just, this is a nice hit. It's the that clicking sound you're hitting is where the plunger actually hits a coil stop that's on the back side of this. That's getting replaced, so you don't see it right now because it's actually, it's embedded on, well, it's mounted to this bracket which goes inside of the coil, where the sleeve is that goes to the coil. And this plunger, it smacks there, gives a nice solid hit, but it does kind of mushroom and flare out over time. And actually, over a lot of hits, that stop starts to collapse just ever so slightly, and it will actually change. Where your flipper ends up hitting, it ends up starting to drift a little bit more and more. It's slight, but it's just one of those things that happens. Here's your end of stroke switch, and notice that it's open until right there, which, I mean, this is not bad as far as like how it's set up. It's just going to get a refresh of everything. So I'm going to start tearing everything apart and start putting the new parts back in. All right, so we got the new sleeve going into the coil there. It fit just fine. And we've got this switch here and the bushing that we both have to get replaced. So to do that, we're going to have to unsolder the wires over here at the end of the switch. And for this bushing, there's nuts on the bottom of these screws that are underneath this metal plate. So to be able to do all of this, what we really need to do is go ahead and unsolder the wires that are going to the switch, take the screws out for this whole plate, take everything just out. That way we can get to the bushing, the nuts and screws, swap this out, It makes it a lot easier to get to this switch here, and we can swap that one out too. And then we'll sit this back in here and go ahead and resolder the wires. So here we go. Now that the whole flipper plate is out, we're going to swap out this switch here and the bushing that we've been talking about. Here's the back side of it. So you can see you've got these nuts here. That's why you have to pull it out, because you can't get to this with the whole plate, everything mounted in. So we'll take all this apart, put the new parts in, and start putting everything back together. All right, so now we're putting it back into the game and getting it ready to hook everything up back the way that it was. The wires, we're going to put in a new bat, new spring, new plunger, new coil stop. So it's really getting freshened up. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and put the screws in. There's 8 screws here. I might throw in a little extra toothpick in a lot of these holes just to tighten up and everything, but we're getting close. So now the coil is getting ready to go back in, and I'm going to just go ahead and point out right now that here's the sleeve. Now notice that it's coming in from this side, and it will extend through over here just a little bit. And the reason for that is when you seat the coil into this bracket over here, it will actually, you can see that the sleeve actually holds the coil and sort of centers everything, keeps it from moving. That's why that's there. And the other side here is you've got that little flange, it's flat. And the reason again for that is you've got the coil stops. And here down, if I can get the camera to zoom in correctly. So here's an old one and the new one. And the old one is not that old. I just know, just by based on looking at it, it's not flared out too awful bad. But a lot of times these will take a major beating and will collapse down and will flare out a bit. I can already see it just a very tiny little bit. If you see here on the edge right about there, it's just starting to flare out just a tiny little bit, but not much. This one's not that old. It's getting fresh parts. So here's a new one that's going in place. Go ahead and grab it and start to throw it into position. And you can see why we have that, again, why that sleeve is shaped that way, because this is all going to go flat. We're going to put the screws in, and then we'll now have that coil set in place, and we'll start putting in the plunger and get the flipper bat in position, get the spring on, and then get it clocked into the right orientation. All right, so before I go putting this new link and plunger assembly in, I'm going to show this old one. So here's the old one here, and you can see you've got this little bit of the slop right here. And that's one of the things that is responsible for killing some of the power. So it takes a beating over time, and that's what wears out. It's on that end, and then right here between the plunger and the link. This new fresh one, I mean, there's not that much movement. It's nice and a nice tight clearance. So this one's good to go in. All right, so I haven't actually put the coil in place yet because I need to give a little bit of clearance for this whole plunger assembly. So let's fish this in, get this into position, and that looks good. We're gonna go ahead and drop the screws in here. Here is the new flipper bat with the red poly band on it. I'm gonna put this underneath the playfield and see if I can feed it through the bushing. And there we go. So it's coming through. I'm going to go ahead and kind of sort of slip this in place. I'm going to go ahead and take my wrench and kind of tighten it down. It's not at all in any orientation, but it's just to be able to try to hold it a little bit in place. And the reason for this is I'm gonna, yeah, it's grabbing it a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and grab the spring that ties this end of the whole little flipper mech to this bracket here. And then next thing we're going to do is start dialing everything in. We're going to dial in the stroke switch, make sure that that's hitting right, which it looks like it probably is pretty close. And then also get the orientation of the flipper bat to the whole flipper mech, and then we'll be done. Right, so the spring is now in place. Let's flip the playfield over. I went ahead and actually put a little toothpick right here to try to, give the orientation a little bit of assistance. And the other thing is that Marco includes a little feeler gauge. Basically, it's just a little piece of plastic to try to kind of help set the gap between the flipper bat and the bushing itself, because you don't want it sitting on the bushing itself. It's just going to rub constantly. This just gives you a little bit of a gap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some just basically some painter's tape and hold this down. I'm going to hold the flipper actually down and against this little toothpick, and that will hold it all right where it needs to be, and I can flip it back over and tighten everything down. All right, kind of major overkill here with the tape, but I got that down and in position. Let's flip the playfield back over, and then now we're going to tighten down this nut here and we should be good. Okay, so the nut's tightened. I just want to point out here, when I tighten this down, this always ends up bending the whole stud that's through here. You can see how it's bent to the left, and it's a little discerning when you do this, but I've never broken one off. You just got to tighten it down till it gets really nice and tight. So now that we got that there, we are looking good, actually. Nice, good, solid click in a stroke. And just checking the other side. Let's check the interstroke switch. So if we get this all the way open, right there, you see it hitting. I might actually open that gap just a little bit, maybe out a little bit more. That might be a little too much. Oh, that's probably about right. So once it hits here, it knows that it's open. All right, well, proof will be in the pudding once the game is done and up and playing, but thanks for watching. We're gonna rinse and repeat on the other two coils, flippers, all that mechs. So thanks for watching.